if you're wanting something, it's the exact thing that you're missing, that you're not giving yourself. So if you're wanting someone to give you some type of abundance, whether it's love or doing something nice for you or money, same thing, you're missing that. And so you have to actually start with you. Why am I missing that? Why do I need that person to do this? And typically what will happen is you go, oh, because that makes me feel bad when they do that. Well, why are you giving your power away that you're going to feel bad if someone else is doing something? You have to go through the layers and the layers and the layers. When you provide that to yourself, then you don't show up with the need, and then you switch. You make a switch from trying to get money to actually inviting money. You can't get love. You can invite love. You can't get money. You can invite money.
I mean, and I had listened to something, I think it was a podcast episode, where I felt like you were saying some similar things too. Like you were feeling that energy was opening up. But for me, for sure, I mean, the last 4 years were its own cycle, and it was really heavy and sludgy. And it's been hard for me, like as an intuitive, people are coming to me, and I hate to be like, part of this is just this energy we're in. You're just going to be in the sludge, and people are desperately trying to change the energy. And what can I do? And there's always things that we can do. And sometimes the lesson is just to surrender and trust the timing of it. And now going into this year, it's such an open and fast energy. And I feel like everyone who took the last cycle, last 4-year cycle, to really like learn our lessons and sit with ourselves and sit in that sludge and feel that frustration, who are super clear on the frequency they want to feel moving forward, it's just going to hit off running, and it's going to open up really fast. I think people are going to bring things into the reality really, really, really quickly. It's very much all of those seeds that we planted in the last 4 years. Finally, they all shoot up at the same time, right? So it's 0 to 100. And I think that on the opposite side of things, some people just on a collective level have taken the last 4 years to become just very complacent and stop kind of setting intention and stop believing and just be like, it's not worth any of it, and I don't care. And I think they're gonna feel even more stuck, to be honest. So like the time is now, and I'm just like telling everyone, it's never too late. It's never too late. You can make a huge shift immediately, and everything will open up. So I'm really excited to see what happens. It's fast, and I love speed, so
I do too.
I'm comfortable with it.
I do too. And I love that you talk about it in terms of momentum too, because I think we're moving away from like even the conversation about time. I mean, it's one of these things where, we all feel more powerful. Like we're just, we're doing the inner work. We're sort of, stepping into more of our authentic self. And I'm like, why put, as people especially do this with money, why put time frames on things? If you're the most powerful that you've ever been, then it should never make sense to your mind that it would ever take you as much time as you thought. And that time that you think it's going to take you is only coming from your mind. So it's like you're almost like putting something out there, and then you're like grabbing the back of your shirt and you're pulling yourself back by doing that. So I'm like, you can set a time, you can set a money goal or a time amount, and then completely let it go. And then you're allowing the momentum to come in. Because I feel like momentum, I don't know what you think about this, but I feel like momentum is actually the same thing. It's like the version of time, but only occurs in the present moment.
I love that. Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but it definitely makes sense. I mean, I feel like most people, the things that hold them back are, none of it's real, right? So it's the time thing, for example. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and he was saying, well, if I leave this and it's going to take me 3 to 5 years to build this up. And I was like, literally, why? He's like, well, that's just industry standard. And I was like, so? Like, why is that industry standard? Because who told someone that? So then they decided that's how long it's going to take me. So then that's what you created.
Yes.
And I was like, look at all the evidence you have all around you of people who do things in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month. It doesn't take them 3 to 5 years, And I think that we have to take a step back and look at these foundational beliefs, and why are we clinging to that? And like, why is that true for other people? Is it true because it has to be true, or is it true because they believed it, so they made it so?
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah. And how much of it is validation from the external world? Because people, they go, they ask me all the time, like, what do I price my product at? I need to do it the same. No one's charging that or whatever. And I'm like, well, how do you know that they're not wrong? How do you know that they just didn't look at the other person who they're not having success and they're not, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we have to, wherever the money point is that resonates with us, like that's what the product should be. That's what the offering should be. Because otherwise it's a decision that's outside of us. It's like, to me, it's like the equivalent of like a parent, like picking up the phone and calling their neighbor and saying, how do I parent my child?
Yes.
If it's outside of you, you're never going to energetically connect to it. And if you're not energetically connected to it, then you're not going to vibrate. It's not going to resonate with you. And then you're going to be standing in front of that person saying, hey, this is my product or whatever. And you're not going to connect with the $3,000 or what it is,
Totally. I totally agree. And I think what the sticky part is, I would love to hear what you have to say about this, is I think a lot of people, they have distortions around value and money. And so when we have conversations like that around, you price it at like what the energy exchange is, like what you're energetically connected to, I think when there's so many distortions, they don't even know, or they have like no reference point. And so people will come in trying to look for a reference point to make it okay. And I like understand why they're doing that. Like, how would you train someone to connect with that energetic value in a way where there isn't a comparison point? Because I think people just don't even know what to do with that. Right. Yeah. If all they know is, I look at things like what I do. I have this conversation a lot, right? Because I train other people in what I do. So we have the pricing conversation all the time. And they're like, well, every healer I've ever seen, or every psychic I've ever seen, or every coach I've ever seen is in this range. And they're just so stuck to that because that's what they know. So if you ask them, I want you to remove everything that you know and just, what do you want it to be? There's still that subconscious piece of them that's always going to use that as a reference point. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So how, like, is there a different way you could frame that for someone, or how could you help them connect in with the energy that feels actually good for them?
Yeah. Well, I think it's two things. I think, if we take it from like a 50,000 foot level, I think we should never equate money and value and time and productivity and all that. Like, that's a conditioned connection, because like we don't actually equate like value with any other type of energy, but we do with money, because we think of money as like this physical or this thing that we have to go out and get and all of that. So I think there's an intrinsic sort of thing that, if we truly believed that money was energy, we would never have that conversation, let me charge what I'm worth. Like, I almost, like, when people say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, first of all, you can't go out and charge what you're worth, because what you think you're worth right now is based on your conditioned self, and it has that is completely negating the potential of you. Like, you can never put worth on your potential. There's not something that you can value. So really what you're doing is you're just sort of plucking, something out of the sky. But as far as like bringing it down to, okay, we're all running businesses, and like, you got to price it at something, right? For me, I always like tell people, find the point of ease. Like, you don't want to feel like you're like, if you're getting to a point in the conversation where you almost like can't talk about it, or you can feel your energy shift, that it might be too high. But if you're at a point where you're like, oh God, it doesn't feel worth it or whatever. I mean, in some ways that's kind of using the brokenness that I just talked about. But in another way, I think it's sometimes like just get somebody out there. So if you can find it, like, what is the point of ease? The other thing is, and this is something that I recently did for my business, is I kind of looked at it like, sometimes price isn't about the product, the value, or me, or anything. Sometimes the price is more about the other person, and it's a decision factor. So we just released a product back in November that it's $17 a month. I have never had a low-cost product. It's always been several $1,000s to, do anything within the spiritual investor. And that's fine for then. But then I thought, I had this thing about, I want to help more people. Like, I want to expand, right? So where the price came from for me was, Well, if I say that I want something, like I want to expand, then what I always do, instead of looking out and going, okay, well, I could do this on social media, I could do this, like that comes later. The first thing I do is, how can I take responsibility for my own expansion? And that, of course, is the internal work. And then how can I actually take that, because we're just bringing more power through all the time. How can I take that out and offer that to more people? Well, one way to do it, because I know I'm dealing with a society who, like, already, they're thinking, well, I don't have the money to do this. I don't have the money to invest. It's risky, all this stuff. So it was really more about them. How do I give them something that overcomes their barriers, and then give them something that is going to be so connecting and valuable for them? They can then make a decision. If they want to stay there and that's good enough, then that's fine. It's kind of like we're doing with podcasts. Like, if somebody comes to the podcast and then they've learned what they want to learn, then great, right?
100%.
But I don't think that it should be about our own, what we value ourselves, because I think that there's such error in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much that goes into pricing. Like, that's, like, for me, it's a lot more intangible. I mean, I went through a similar thing in the last year. We switched everything. It was in July, so recently, to a $33 a month membership, like for the same reasons, right? Yeah. And I think about, within my business, I like to have different legs and different things going on, and there's so many different access points. And for me as a consumer, I'm just thinking about this right now. I'm like, when I'm looking for support with something or want to learn about something, like, I know what I'm looking for. Yeah. And there is something within me that also, for whatever reason, it's not conscious, I'm like, this is what I like, what I want to invest in it. Yeah. Like, and so, if I'm like, hey, I want this type of mentor in my life. Like, I'm looking to invest, 6 figures in that. Like, that is what I'm looking to invest in that, because that's just like, the energy of it is what I want, And then there are other things where I just know what I want to invest in, and maybe it's less. But I think, like, for me, the deeper I've gone into just my work, it's hard for me to logically explain why I price things. I just, like, know what the number is. Yes. I just know.
Yes. That's it. I wonder if it's that, or I wonder if it's because you have a knowingness that you are going to always get energetically behind whatever you do, and your own power.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Yeah. I think I could probably break it apart into all of these factors, like things you're describing. Yeah. I'm like, I just don't even think about it that way. I'm just like, this is what it is for whatever reason, I think that part of this is about our relationship with money. And I know for me, I don't really have a charge with numbers, and it took me a while to get there. Yeah. And so I think about just how I feel with numbers now, and how it's so different from where I was. And like, I see that, but I'm like, whoa, I don't have that kind of charge. And when I love the way you talk about money, and I think it's really expansive for people. I want to talk about how you got there. Like, what has your relationship with money been throughout your life?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up that you don't have a charge with money. I love the way you put that. Yeah. Because, I refer to it as money neutrality, which is probably very similar to what you're thinking, right? And I think that people are migrating towards that. Money is actually a function of self-love. And I think the more self-love we have, the more we're sort of needing less and opening ourselves up to money. So I would say that people are sort of converging to the middle of that. But I really haven't ever had a charge with money my entire life. Now, that doesn't mean I've always made fantastic decisions and all of that. Like I did, after college, I had this period where, I went into credit card debt, and I had the truck that didn't work. And that was when I first moved to San Diego, actually. And I was living in Normal Heights, and I was like, how am I going to get to work? And I was like, I think a neighbor works close to downtown, so I think I'm going to ride with them, right? But so I've had enough go on where I can sort of, understand how it feels to be in a situation where it's not ideal. But I have never believed, like there's no cell in my body that believes that I will ever not have all the money that I call in, not have all the money that I need. Like this whole concept of like people are afraid they're going to run out of money.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know how that really exists, because there's such a direct connection between money and energy. And I think that if we really think about it, like, I think we can see it. Like, if you think about someone, like, let's say you're sitting in a restaurant and someone walks in the room. And by the way, I think people, like the people who are listening to this podcast, have a massive leverage factor in terms of being wealthy in the future, because they're going to be able to tap into it more so than a lot of people who are, I'll say, asleep, right? But, going back to that, like, let's say someone walks in the room. You can tell if their energy is off. You can tell if they're angry. You can tell if they're right. And so what happens is, even if it's very subtle, we will pull back, or we will shut down, or we'll change our gaze or something like that. So we are energetically shutting down to that person. So we're not actually going to do any type of energetic exchange, including money. Now, there are also these people who you walk in the room, or they walk in the room, and you're like, wow, I need to speak to this person, right? You are so connected and you're so open. It's kind of like what you were just saying. You're like, I have to be in the energy of this person, right? I mean, I hear that. Like, I just started the round of our mastermind this Tuesday, and I was asking them questions, and so many of them, they said the same thing. They were like, yes, we want to learn money investing, but we actually want to be in your energy. That's why we're here, right? I'm sure you hear that too, right?
Totally.
And I think that a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs are going to continue hearing that. Then that's the way that people are going to make decisions. And so if you think about that, money is literally flowing to you based on how open you are, how much of an open conduit. Like, we are money conduits, in effect. And I also think that if we were, and I think, like, okay, so when I say this, like, everyone who's listening to this, I really want you to think about, is this truth for you or not? Because I really think if we were out there and expressing ourselves as the full, authentic version of who we are, I'm saying 100% authentically who we are, I think deep down, everyone knows they would have no money problems.
I couldn't agree more. This is why I was so excited to talk to you. I just feel like if everyone listened to everything you say about this and applied it, no one would have money issues. Like, I feel this passionately about how you express this. Like, I was telling my team, I was like, I'm so excited to have her on, because I'm like, this is it. Like really it is, and I totally agree with that. I think where, as you talk, I can hear people's questions. Let's put Ahai into it, right? I hear people's questions, and I want to backtrack before we get to that part.
Yes,
because there's a lot in what you just said that I want to unpack. The first being, I can definitely relate to you. I've never worried about I'm gonna run out of money. Like, even when I had no money, I was never worried. Like, and I feel like, at the time I didn't know this, but I think part of that was just because of how I came into this world, like, not asleep, Yes. So I've always had things just energetically, and because I had my gifts on when I was a kid, there are just things I just knew and I wasn't ever worried about. But I also think that was a function of how I grew up, right? And my parents, through what they said, I can see now how they never said things that were putting me into scarcity, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so I'm really grateful for that. And, they accidentally did that, thankfully.
Yes.
And they came from two different backgrounds, like, my mom had nothing. My dad, they were always fine. But it's interesting because my mom was always the one that really would tell me things very much in abundance energy. She was like, you just share yourself with the world. You never have to worry. Wow. Because she was so self-made. My mom was just always someone, like, started with, like, had nothing, and she just kept putting herself out there. And I mean, what she created for herself was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like so grateful I had that. But then I also see a lot of people around me where I hear things that people say. I'm like, wow, I understand how if you grow up hearing like there's never enough, if you know we're gonna run out of money, like that will be imprinted. I guess I'm wondering for you, do you feel like that was a function of what you heard around you growing up? Do you feel like that was just an inner knowing you've always had? Like how did the programming around you play into that?
Well, I think it's probably similar to what you're talking about. So I actually grew up, you know, it was a bit of a volatile situation. You know, my parents fought a lot, and they ended up getting divorced when I was 9, and my mom left, my dad left, and I lived with different family members and all that. So I had that whole thing, right? Yeah. But I don't know how it happened that no one really said anything, at least that I remember, or at least here's what it is also, I think. No one said anything that my energetic system allowed in that related to the scarcity of money. Because if I think about my aunt and my uncle, both sets of grandparents, all the cousins that I lived with, you know, oops, I hit that, all the cousins that I lived with, I'm sure that there were scarcity conversations. But I feel like it's just, like there's something that
you knew it wasn't true, so you didn't.
That must have been it. That must have been it. Yeah. Like I knew that it wasn't true or worthy of taking in. Because I also as a child, I couldn't figure out like why people like small talk. Like Same. I remember as a child, Same. And I was like, I'd sit there, and then these adults would walk into the room, and I was like, why do they say the same thing? Yeah. And it feels like a waste of time. Why do you say hello, how are you, and talk about the weather? Everybody knows what the weather is. They just walked in the door. So it's like I couldn't figure out, and I was like an observer, right? Yeah. And so then if something didn't make sense, I was like, well, I'm just going to leave that over there, because why am I going to spend my energy like thinking about that, you know? And even when my mom, you know, my mom started like, my mom and I have a great relationship. So it's, you know, this is all sort of just something of the past. But, you know, I asked her one day, I was like, when are you going to stop leaving? Because I'd wake up and she'd be gone for 3 days, or she'd be gone for 3 months or whatever. And I was like, oh God. And she looked at me, thank God she told me the truth. She's like, when I get married again. And I'm like, oh, well, I felt no emotion. I was like, all I knew in that moment was, well, I have to make decisions for myself. And it was like something just went through me, and that was, I was 9, and like that's literally the most pivotal moment of my entire life.
Wow. You asked that question when you were 9?
9.
Wow.
And when she gave me the answer, I felt it was truth. We feel the truth, right? And I was like, okay, that's it. It was like the most simple, and I was like, it was a switch. And there have been sort of, there's 2 sides to the coin always, right? So while that has given me a lot of power, confidence, independence, it's also caused me, like in relationships or whatever, I can just, you know, okay, I'll shut down. This is not, you know, I'll go somewhere else, right? So I think that just coming back to all of this with money, it's half the time are you allowing things to come into because you're really deciding your own filtering system. And I think that people have to, especially now when we're in this power time, like we talked about in 2025, part of using your power is actually to stop letting your old stories penetrate you the way that you are, because you're creating your reality, as we know. But if you really believe that you're creating your reality, every time you remember a story, you're actually destroying yourself. And when we step into the responsibility to stop destroying ourselves, then we don't have to do anything else, because automatically the authentic self rises to the surface. Automatically our frequency rises. And as our frequency rises, more opportunities become available. And we get to step into those opportunities. And we're not actually doing anything different. We're just being different, because we're not beating ourselves up anymore.
Yeah. I think this can be difficult for the person who feels a lot of emotional charge with money, and who feels there's like a body tension and let's say they're in a place where they're not financially where they want to be at, and they're worried about how they're going to, you know, pay next month's rent and things like that. And I think when people are in that state, hearing things like this can be really difficult for them to kind of like release that tension and actually hear that or actually integrate that. If anyone listening is like feeling any of that while we talk about this, do you have any advice?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to go back to the truth of it all. So if someone is worried that they're not going to be able to, you said, pay their rent or pay their bills or whatever, is that really true? I mean, have they in the past not been able to pay their bills, or is it that they're remembering the worry? And there's a difference in remembering the worry and remembering the incident. And I think another level of responsibility is we choose our own evidence. We can choose in that moment, hey, you know what? It hasn't been fun, but I have made this work, right? I think there is also a level of responsibility where, and when I say responsibility, I'm not like hardline responsibility. I'm saying responsibility as a function of self-love. The reality is, like, if someone is concerned about paying their bills, they probably do know their cost of living. Like, they just didn't wake up this morning and figure out it costs $5,000 a month to live. And so what's happened is they have made a conscious choice to allow that to go on. So what they've done is they've actually chosen the worry. So I'm not discounting the worry. I'm not empathizing with the worry. I'm trying to bypass the worry by giving someone almost like a connection with that part of themselves that has a deeper truth that goes beyond the story. Because the moment that you realize and you go, oh, wait, I am creating the scenario, the same thing I did 6 months ago, where I only have $300 left in the account. Wait, this has happened again. People do it all the time with credit cards, right? They go in debt again, right? All we have to do is, with forgiveness, with kindness, go, okay, I did that. Half the thing with money, like, people would automatically make more money if they just stopped doing what they're doing now. Because it's their money habits that are keeping them poor. Like, I tell people all the time, like, they come in like the program and they're like, what do I do? I'm like, I don't know, just do something different. Right? Whatever you're not doing. Like, let your best friend manage your money for a while. You'll have more money come in, right?
For sure. Well, I think that a lot of, like, with that, and I want to tie this into the authenticity piece because I feel like that's huge. I think there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who feel like they're doing everything right. They're doing all the money mindset work. They feel like I'm doing everything right, I'm putting myself out there, and it's not working.
They are. I agree with them. Do you know the problem, though?
Tell us.
They don't have the ability to receive. So they're going to keep doing and doing and doing, but they're going to block the money. They're going to block the abundance. Because so abundance is all the same thing. It's the same. It's all the energy of love. And then what happens is we live in a world where abundance comes in different forms. Abundance comes in clean water. Abundance comes in relationships, family. Abundance comes in, in the form of money. So what happens is we have already pre-decided what form of abundance we want. We just don't know that. And you see this when people say, oh, I don't need more money. I have a family and everyone's healthy and I'm abundant. I love that. That's great. But you don't live in an or world. You live in an and world. So you're not giving more value to your family and the health and all of that. In fact, I would say you're probably doing the opposite because you're cutting yourself off to more abundance, be it financial or love or whatever you want to do. So it's like we have to acknowledge that no one is doing this to us. We have literally decided how much we're willing to receive, myself included. Like, you don't just get to a certain level where you have no money blocks. Like, we're always, it's infinite. We're living we're just a world of parallel realities. And so we're choosing the reality. And if your income meets your cost of living, then that's just the reality that you've chosen.
I've shared this a lot on the podcast. When I was younger, I realized this thing where every time I would like get a new house I lived in, I would intentionally choose something where my rent was outside of my means.
Okay.
And magically my income would increase.
Yes, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, and
I
would just, and I figured that out. I was like, okay, I'll just use this to my advantage. You know, I want to make more money, just like pay more of my mortgage, you know?
Yes.
And then I started realizing, I'm like, I can use that to my advantage, and also I can get underneath this, right? About like, when I'm requiring, because that was what it was for me. Like, it was this energy of requirement. I'm like, because I have a foundational belief, I'm always going to have plenty for what I need and how I live.
Yes.
That's that was my deeper belief. So I was like, so if my cost of living, like my lifestyle just becomes more expensive, I'm going to make more money because it's always going to cover it. You know?
I love this. I love this. So you used your own belief, like the truths that you know, and you stood on the shoulders of those.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can certainly relate to that. I feel like I'm always finding like, and I think for me, it's a lot around, it's not even receiving. It's actually more about receiving all the places at the same time. That's like my main refinement.
What do you mean?
Like, receiving a lot financially, and at the same time feeling like I'm receiving, like I'm in my best health, my best mindset, like social life is at its peak. Like it's like receiving in all the places at the same time. That's more of like where I notice, I like limit where I can receive, because everything will be going great over here and this little thing will teeter this way, because I just like have to let myself receive more and hold more, you know? So that's like part of how it comes up for me.
But you're so aware of it.
Yeah, I'm very aware.
How did you become aware of it?
I'm psychic.
Yeah, I guess so. That solves a lot of problems, right?
It solves a lot of problems.
That's so
yeah,
cool.
I mean, I'm clairvoyant, so I see energy fields. I see, so I just look.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and I'll look at my business, I'll look at myself, and I'm like, where's the money block? And I'll see it, and it's a visual thing for me, you know. So it's like, it'll look like a container, or for a lot of people with money, it looks like a house. So I can tell someone's relationship with money based on what their house looks like. Some people, it's like a broken down, shabby, dingy home falling apart. Other people, it's a castle. Other people, it's a glass house. Other people, it's like a Willy Wonka factory. Like there's so much of a quality to like what their building is related to their money. And then when I look at the building, I can see like sometimes it looks really great up front, and in the back it's a mess. Right? Sometimes the whole thing is crystal clean. Sometimes it's, you have this amazing castle and you have all these walls built up around it. You're not actually letting anybody in to enjoy it. Right? So that's just one of the ways that I'll see it. So I'll see it. I'm like, got it.
I love that. Well, I'll tell you one of my money blocks that I just got through and that I just realized.
Yeah, please share.
So something that I'm doing in 2025 that I know is going to open me up to my next level is I am cleaning up a lot of the stuff. Like I was married, and so then my wife did all of the detail stuff, right? And so if we, whether it was a trust or, we owned a lot of rental property, and, so we had all the things to do with that, and then you got to keep track of everything with taxes and all that. So I didn't have to do that for a long time. I mean, I didn't even open a piece of mail for 16 years, right? I was just sort of allowed to like be in my bubble and build my business and do all the fun things that I wanted, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't open my mail, and I don't have a spouse, so I just don't open it.
So I've been in resistance of this, right? Since I got divorced 2 years ago, I've been in there's this part of me that I didn't realize I was kind of pissed off about the fact that I needed to like do all of these things now, right? So I finally was like, okay, I just need to own this. I need to take responsibility for the fact that I have some resistance to this. So I just switched the way that I was doing things. So I am looking at a lot more things in a more detailed level, because I'm more of a 50,000 foot view. Like,
same.
I pay attention when I move big blocks of money around. And what I've always like told, the story I was telling myself is, I'm moving 250,000. I don't have to pay attention to the subscription over here but it's all energy, and I know that, and every dollar is a gift. And so the way I'm treating the $15 subscription shouldn't be different than the $250,000 investment, right? And so I just fixed it. I hired a personal assistant who's helping me, and I put new sort of, you'll call them habits in place, where what I'm doing is I'm creating my own enjoyment factor out of looking at the details of money that I didn't enjoy before, because I'm refusing to believe the story that it's not fun for me, or that I can't do it, or that I just don't want to.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people feel with things like this. So is that just you tell yourself, I'm going to enjoy this? Or like, how do you make it more enjoyable?
Well, I kind of go into the fire on like, we talked about this before. We started this with what is new and different and outside of me. Like, I'm looking for things. I'm looking for ways to let go of my old identity. So instead of me saying, oh, this is something that's not fun to me because that's my old identity speaking, I'm taking on, well, if my identity wasn't in my ear saying all of that, then I can draw from infinite potential on the way that I want to feel about it, because we get the ability to show up new every day. The new version of me that has what I want knows that I need to clean up the resistance, because it's not about doing more, it's about removing all of that, right? So sweeping the floor of the money energetic world for me, right? In order to do that, my viewpoint and my behavior needs to be this certain way. And it's really easy, actually, if we can shut down our past, that story, then what happens is we get into money neutrality, and it becomes a blank slate. We make a decision. What would be fun for this new version of me? We live into it. And the great thing about us is that it's actually easy to form new habits.
Yeah, it is.
If we have space for it.
Yeah.
That's why the meditation is one of the things that's so important, because that's what allows the space to be able to do it.
Yeah. That was one of the big things for me, is like the space. And I think earlier on in my life, it was like always more. Yeah. And I was like, abundance, more. Yeah. But then I realized, energetically, I was tapping into, like, what's the problem? I was like, it's too much. Like, simplify. Like, simpler it is, the bigger the container is, and more can flow to you.
Yes.
So it's like, that's more, and I have a habit of like, more unfinished, don't open my mail. Like, I have a habit of that. So I'm like, wait, clean it up, like, simplify that, like, just opens up room for way more to come in. It does. It
opens up room, and it opens up space within you to help more people.
100%. Well, and with the piece around like the identities, when we're stepping into a new identity, how do we know what's authentic? Because that's kind of what we were talking about, right? Of like, if we were just fully our most authentic selves, our relationship and experience of money would be different. Yeah. So I want to talk about the authenticity piece, right? Yeah. How do we know it's really authentic when we're ever evolving, changing, multidimensional people? Yes. Right? And I think a lot of people feel like they're being very authentic, and they can't see the places that they're not. Like, genuinely.
Exactly. This is so great that you brought this up, because they're being authentic in relation to their old identity. But what people are really seeking is they're seeking to be authentic in relation to source, who they are. Yeah. But the thing is, when you are conscious, you're no one. And so I think that people get into a trap where they're like holding on to their value system. And this gets really sort of grayed when the value system is, I give money, or I donate, or anything. It could be, I help this person, or you know what I'm saying? Like, value system and conditioning is such a blurred line. Yeah. It's like, how much is coming from your conditioning and you protecting yourself, and how much is coming from your almost trying to prove and validate that you're a good person. Because the thing is, like, we're all good people. Yeah. Like, we don't need to validate that. And when we're source, we're not worried about, are we a good person or are we not? Yeah. So I would say, if there is, it always goes back to love. And so this is kind of how I look at it is, if we take this back down to unconditional love, because when we're in unconditional love, we're also in full flow money, and we can have any amount we want. So, and people can practice unconditional love with money. They can practice it in relationships. So let's just say, like, you were in a relationship, right? And what most relationships are is it's more of a transactional nature. It's like you get into the relationship and you're like, I need you to do this for me, and then I will do this for you, and you do this for me, and I'll do this for you. And that means that we love each other, right? And that's how relationships are really built. But they become exhausting and they become not sustainable and all kinds of problems, right? We mostly have that same relationship with money. You go out, you offer something, and you're like, yeah, I'm helping people. But what's really behind that, there's a transactional nature. And so you might be helping people, but you are actually still in the energy of your authentic version of you in relation to your conditioned ego self. So let's go back to that example that we're in a relationship. Unconditional love in a relationship is when you're literally in full listening mode. You are not inserting yourself into the space. All of your energy is, I need to get this person. I need to understand what they're saying. I need to understand their needs. I need to understand that they're not actually probably even angry about what they said. What's really going on is they're worried about their mother's health. What can I do in order to relieve some stress on this person that I love? And then so what I do, because I'm a creator, I create as beautiful as a space as I possibly can for this human that I love. And they're able to sort of rise in their frequency. They're able to feel the love. And then there's no transactional nature. The thing is, though, is that it goes back to my mantra. So you show up like, needing nothing, receive all. Because when I do that, I receive the most enormous love. I almost can't even talk about it without crying, because I receive the most enormous love. And I don't even care about what I need from them. I don't even remember it, because the love that I feel in myself, vibrating through myself, the fact that their world has been changed is so elevated. And so that is our authentic self. And I actually think that we are just scratching the surface on really living our authentic self. I think that most of the time people are living their authentic self. They feel good after a yoga class, or they go out and they help someone and they feel good. That's not near your authentic self. That's your authentic self as it has been designed and trained to live in this world.
Wow. I think a lot of people will resonate, or they do resonate with the idea that if they're giving a lot and they're not receiving, they feel drained. They feel exhausted because they want equal energy exchange. So that seems very different than what you're expressing.
Yes, because the equal energy exchange is the 3D world.
So how would someone get from what I just described, if they're kind of vibrating there, right, into what you're expressing?
They can practice it in relationships, actually, because when money is a relationship, right, whether it's a relationship with money or money comes usually through other people or services or things like that, so they can practice it in that. The first thing that they have to do, though, is you have to actually look at where is the need. And the need is actually the same thing. So if you're wanting something, it's the exact thing that you're missing, that you're not giving yourself. So if you're wanting someone to give you some type of abundance, whether it's love or doing something nice for you or money, same thing, you're missing that. And so you have to actually start with you. Why am I missing that? Why do I need that person to do this? And typically what will happen is you go, oh, because that makes me feel bad when they do that. Well, why are you giving your power away that you're going to feel bad if someone else is doing something? You have to go through the layers and the layers and the layers. When you provide that to yourself, then you don't show up with the need, and then you switch. You make a switch from trying to get money to actually inviting money. You can't get love. You can invite love. You can't get money. You can invite money.
Oh, love that. That's going to be real. How does this apply to a situation like, let's say someone has a team member. Let's say somebody has an employee, right? Who they're paying, right? A salary. Let's say that employee is not showing up to work, is not delivering, what's part of the job description. Like, in that kind of dynamic, right? I would say for most business owners, what they would do is say, you're not performing, like, so we need to, end this contract, right? That's like how most people would handle that situation. So from what you're describing about, like just living as unconditional love, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And not needing, how does that get applied to a situation like that? Like as a business owner, because most people listening to this are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, both individuals are on their journey, and there's something that they're supposed to see because we're mirrors for each other, right? And the closer we are, that's why intimate relationships, that's the big mirror, right? Yeah. So, and even a team dynamic is a closer mirror than someone that you would probably just meet out there.
For sure.
So in that situation, in order to step into unconditional love, and also we want the accelerated version, right? That we're on this journey and we're like, give me the most money in the fastest amount of time. Give me the most personal transformation. Give me all the stuff, right? I would actually connect with that person, and I would approach it as a knowingness that part of their behavior is actually a reflection of me. Mm-hmm. So I would take that on first and foremost. And then I would connect with them in a way that I could figure out kind of what I said to you earlier when I described unconditional love, like, no, what's really going on with you? Not from a place of how it impacts me. Mm-hmm. What's really going on with you, and what do you really want? Because typically when you can find that out, it's not in your mind. It's something that it always surprises you, right? Because we're not in their world. And so there's something to be learned from that. And I would actually, from within that space, because if you are creating that space and you are calling through the source version of you, and then you are truly getting their world and calling through the source version of them, then it always happens that you get a new answer that you couldn't see. Mm-hmm. That's how I would approach it. I wouldn't go into it with the standard, this is the way everybody else does it, and I need this person to not be on my team anymore, and blah, 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 blah. Because, but then again, like, I also look for places where I can switch, where I can not partake in the rules of the 3D world.
Yeah.
And how can I show up as my higher self? Because that's all we're doing is we're brought here to play in the contrast and then expand. Play in the contrast and expand. But we have to stop avoiding the contrast and saying it feels bad, because it's all exactly the same.
Yeah. No, it is.
Yeah.
So when we talk about authenticity, right, and like where you're vibrating, how does this connect to action? Like actions we're taking, and I guess aligned action, right? So I guess the question becomes, okay, so if I'm vibrating here, right, is that enough? Or where does action come into it, of like what I'm tangibly doing?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I don't actually know, and maybe you know more about this, but I've thought about this for myself. I don't actually know where I'm vibrating, or the frequency that I'm on. I don't know that it has a direct connection to how I feel. Because I think I can feel really good, and I think I can be an ego, and I've witnessed myself do that quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm trying to do for myself is almost like break apart the connection of that, because we have a tendency to relate concepts that we want to be related, but they really don't relate at all, like money and time. That's the big one, right? If we break that apart, like what's in the middle of that, And so I think that if we look at our lives, like sometimes I'll be like, it's like the end of the day and I'm exhausted or whatever. And I would say, oh, I'm in a lower vibe. Maybe I don't want to do certain things. Like maybe I won't record a podcast or something like that. Yeah. Well, then I can get a call from someone who just lights me up. And suddenly I'm like, whoop, right back up.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of a function of connection than it is feeling. I actually think feeling is just the result of just the stories we've been telling ourselves.
I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I guess where I'm going with it is, I mean, you teach people to invest, right? And so I think you obviously teach and share a lot about, you know, like the energetics of this, right? So how much do you emphasize like the practical pieces of investing, for example, to build wealth versus what we're talking about? Do they go together? Do you see them as like equally as important? How do you connect all that?
Yeah, they go together. And I actually think that intuitive people, I think they're the best investors.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if it was all just about a spreadsheet and numbers and all of that, then we would never be able to beat a supercomputer.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
If it was just that, then, you know, there would be no such thing as a free market. You know, it would be like the rules of the game are already there. I think that what happens with the market is that it's like the same game. So if you think of it like a game board, like let's say chess, right? And you've got all the pieces there. Well, just what happens is the market comes along and just the chess pieces get rearranged. So yes, I do think that you have to have a fundamental knowledge about it because you can't play the game unless you know what the moves are, right? But I don't think it's as much as people think it is, and it's also not as difficult as people think it is. I think that we have been conditioned to believe it's difficult. A lot of the reason is I do think the financial industry kind of wanted to keep, you know, a veil in front of it because then you would need to hire someone to go out and, you know, and do this for you, right? Now that you can just do it yourself, like I think, you know, the veil has been dropped with that. But what hasn't been dropped is people's belief that finance is some black box and that it's something like you don't have to love stocks. Yeah. You don't have to spend 5 hours a week. You don't have to you don't have to put all of your money on the line and not be able, you know, and like lose all this money and everything like that. Like, I think if people can get beyond the stories and simply look at investing for what it is, which is you have access to one of the greatest tools that we have ever known in the 3D world, which is you literally get to take $1 and say, here you go, expand this for me while you go over here and work on and do whatever you want to do. And then all of a sudden you get $5 back. I can't understand why somebody doesn't want to play that game.
Yeah. I mean, I can't either, but you probably know better than me. Like, what are the reasons that they say they don't?
Oh, they always say, I don't know enough.
Yeah.
They always say that.
Yeah. But
however, right, if you ask someone, you know, well, do you wish you started investing 10 years ago? Yes. If you gave someone the opportunity, let's say you could play with time and then you gave someone the opportunity, they'd find $50,000 to put in the market 10 and they would know enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so it's a lie.
It's also just like, do you ever know enough about anything to get started? I mean, there's nothing I'm doing now that when I started, I like already knew everything about. Like, you know what I mean? If I'm like, I want to learn to play basketball or I want to learn to play the piano and I know nothing about it, am I going to be like, I can't because I don't know anything about it? The point is you're learning it. You're right?
Yes.
you just gonna learn it.
Yes.
So, yeah. I mean, there's such a resistance for people with it. And I do think a lot of it is kind of the conditioning, you know, and them thinking it's a lot harder than it is. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
And I think all of those rules, like you were talking about, it's like they have rules in their head about, well, if I can't invest this amount, then why would I invest? You know?
like it's a waste of time or something like that.
I think also a lot of people just don't even realize how much of a duh it is.
Yes. And
I also think there's a lot of people are very committed to, if I haven't worked hard for it, it's not worth it.
Oh yeah. I have people in the program who are literally making 6 figures in investing, and it's difficult for them to like get their energy around it.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're like, I didn't do anything for this.
Yeah. So how do they do that if they're saying that, there's probably like mental block to receiving, but then they do receive it.
They do receive it, but they haven't energetically received it. So they haven't changed a lot of their thinking with regards to like, okay, so an example that just comes to mind. So there's someone in the program, so she's a stay-at-home mom. And so she's got, they have 3 kids. And so her husband works. And so she came into the program like a year ago. And her thing was, I feel like I'm not contributing to the family because I'm not earning, right? Even though she's a wonderful mother and like, she knows that she's contributing, but she wasn't contributing, money wise. So then what she started doing, she started investing, and she starts making more and more and more and more, with that. So what she did was she really went vertical on learning how to invest, and the market has done really well. It was up 24% in 2023, and it was up another 23% last year, right? So, so she's done well with that, and she's really happy about that. She feels like, oh my gosh, I'm contributing to the family now, right? So what she did is she went up a level with it, right? And now look, we all do, and now she's hit her glass ceiling again, which is, well, I don't really feel like this is my money. So what that tells me is, oh my God, there's infinite potential here, because if you can do that and you can have a 6-figure investing account and you don't feel like it's your money, imagine what you do when you bring it in even closer. And she really has. She's brought it in closer and closer. What she did, and this is something that I think is important, is her energy didn't waver. That's what I notice about her. Like sometimes people will go towards something, like they'll open an investing account and they'll buy like, some stocks that they love. They get Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, they'll throw it in there. And then what happens is life comes in and they take their energy away. And then something happens with that, or then they're like, oh, I don't understand. Then they go back, and it's almost like the rubber band effect is holding people back more so than the not knowing.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, everyone likes to talk about manifestation. No one talks about that's just, it's energy, right? And it's very simple. It's just, where is your energy pointed? And keep it there. And if you keep it there, it happens. It's like, it's that simple, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, if you're asking me, am I going to manifest it? No, you're not. Like, I'm like, I manifest fast because I direct my energy, and there's literally nothing that's going to make me undirect my energy in terms of like, I know it's going to happen. It's happening. Yes. Like momentum is going. So nothing else could happen. Right? Yes. So it is all just, are you letting your energy flow there? Right. And there's no effort of that. It's like, it's just pointing. Just pointing.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? I'm so glad you're talking about this too, because I can see that in other people. Like I saw a photograph of you and I knew that you were that person. Even before I heard you talk, like I knew that what it is it's like, it's almost like I envision it as like a laser beam of energy, like whatever you pointed at. Right. And I do the same thing. And I want people to know that like, I am not any more special than anybody else. I just have energetic consistency with regards to what I want, because I already believe that it's mine. Yeah. And I don't believe in this thing, imposter syndrome. I don't even understand. Why would you not have confidence about what you want to do? Yeah. Yeah. Why would you need validation?
I can relate. People ask me questions. They send in questions like that, and I'm like, I don't know how to answer this. Yeah. Like I don't know how to answer, and that's why I like to ask other people, because I'm like, you probably have a good answer. Like imposter syndrome, self-love, like belief about things I can't see. I'm like, I can't compute, I guess.
I can't either.
So I'm like, I don't know. Like
it feels like if someone told me the sky was like red or something. Yeah. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, I heard you say that, but it's not gonna do anything to me.
And it's like the worth thing when people ask, like, how do I increase my self-worth? I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, I don't think of myself as like, there's like, I'm worthy or I'm not. Like, that's not even like, I just am. Yes. Like I just am. Yeah. Like, and so I don't have an answer really to any of that.
I don't either. Yeah. What I do for myself is, it is 100% comes down to one thing. All I have to do is manage my energy in a different way. That's the job. That's my only job.
Yeah, 100%.
I just manage my energy in a different way, and it just gets oriented in a different way. And if I don't have something in my life that I want, I'm like, that's my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to shifting thoughts around a lot of this stuff, because I'm sure a lot of what you're sharing, people are like, oh, I gotta rewire that. And you work with people all the time who have certain beliefs around things. What method, or what do you think works the best for shifting those thoughts around things? Like, is there a process? Are you a believer of just change it? What do you feel like helps people actually ingrain in a new belief?
I think we got to have space in order to do it. So I think that's the first thing. And that's probably sounds like oversimplified and boring, but you brought up a good point that like really all of this is actually very simple. And the more we can sort of boil it down to simplicity, then, the easier it gets for us. I have a practice where like, cause I have horses. And so they're in a pasture. And so what I do is I'll go out and then I look at the different fence posts and I'll go, okay, from where I am now until that fence post down there, I'm actually going to stop thought. And then so I just go and whether it's paying attention to walking or the landscape or the horses or whatever. Now, it doesn't always work. It depends on how quickly my mind has been going. Is it locked up on something? Because I don't want to give the illusion that I never get locked up on things, because I do. Not very often and not for very long. Typically, if I get locked up on something, which means I get emotionally pulled to the edge of the spectrum, then I can come back pretty quickly with that. But one of the things that I do is I practice stopping thought, because everything is available to us when we can choose our thoughts.
Yep.
And it's literally that simple. And so why would I not practice that? If I know that that is the root of the game, then why would that not be my most important thing?
When did you start practicing that?
Just probably a year ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't that long ago. So that's not the whole reason that, money has come in and flown in my life. It's an accelerated way that I've been able to do things. So, but I mean, I've always done meditation and,
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, you talked about your relationship with money, how it's been kind of for a while, but in terms of, I call it energetic flexibility, like the way that you can shift your energy.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that? How you
with
can,
money?
when you were saying like, if I go here, I can come back pretty quick. Like I can rebound, or I can shift those thoughts pretty quick. I'm the same.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you've always been like that, if that's natural to you, or if that changed over time.
I've always been like that, except for there has been a problem area in my life, and it's intimate relationships. The trauma in my life has shown up because it's a lot of childhood stuff, like from the violence and all of that. That has shown up in intimate relationships, more recently especially. It didn't actually show up in my marriage, but I was kind of in an in and out relationship for the last 16 months. It did show up then, and what I did is, instead of running from it, because I think if I had listened to the 3D world, I honestly would have run for the hills, because I was like, oh my God. But I was like, I felt like I was sitting in a room with like a speaker, and I couldn't I couldn't understand what the speaker was trying to tell me, but I knew I needed to listen. And I've always gone on these, like, this deep, like, I'll get one deep message and I'll literally plan and pattern 10 years around it. And so I'm always like that deep message, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm on the other side of that. So I'm outside of that now. But I've reemerged, being able to actually finally, that was my last, as far as I know, unless I uncover more, which is possible, that as far as categorically the areas of my life, if you think about, like, I have great relationships with family, and that's friends, and that's never been a problem. Money, not a problem, right? Health, not a problem. Eating, all that stuff, right? Yeah. So I feel like I slayed the dragon with that. And slaying the dragon doesn't mean that stuff is not there. It means that stuff no longer has access to me anymore. And the person that I was in this with is literally on a daily basis like, I cannot believe the difference in you. Like, it's almost like I went through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Initiation.
Yeah.
Huge initiation.
Yeah, and I don't know what it's going to uncover, but
a lot.
I know it is going to allow me to show up in the world in a more powerful way. And because I know that, what it does is it keeps me in, oh my God, I'm excited,
Yeah. It's cool to me. I mean, I like to look at how people, like, diffuse their energy, so to speak. And I am very much like what you said, like a laser. Like I'm like, I pop in and I'm like laser, and that throws a lot of people off and other people love it. You know, I'm like a fire hose.
Yes.
And your energy, the way you diffuse is more like, if you're standing here, you're like diffusing in every direction, and it's like soft and loving and like slowly filling up the whole room, and it's potent, but it's like, it's all like kind of like it's like a fog, you know. It's like it's like diffusing out in every direction, and then you're like, whoa, like I feel the energy of it. And I love that. It's like it's super cool. And I feel like, you know, with what you're just describing, it feels like it changed a little bit of like, where it seems like you're super comfortable letting it all flow out and flow through you. It was like something just got cleared so that you're also like receiving all of that.
You're right.
Right.
You're exactly right. Yes, my ability to receive has gone up tremendously.
Yeah.
My self-love has gone up tremendously, which we can't give what we don't have.
Yeah.
And so I am giving much more love out there now than was ever even possible for me to give before, because those parts of my identity that I was holding on to, they got smashed like to smithereens.
Oh,
it's not even a part of me anymore.
Wow. Just broke everything open in the best way. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, no wonder you're trying to do everything that will like shed old identities, because you just broke everything open so you can be everything. Yes.
And you know what? Nothing happened. Like, I didn't die.
Yeah.
I didn't, like, it was like, that's the thing. Like, we're protecting ourselves from what?
Mm-hmm. I know. That's the thing. It's like, it's literally all of just the stories and all the things that we create in our head. Yeah. All the rules. Mm-hmm. It's a mind game. It's all a mind game.
It is a mind game. And you know, for people out there, because I want to say one more thing about this relationship thing, because I hear something out there all the time. And it's when people get into relationships, they have this, they call it like a checklist, right? Mm-hmm. Red flags or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually want to encourage people to completely abandon that, because if you're seeing a red flag, that's you, and that's not him or her or whatever, and you lean into that. If you want to break that, lean into it, because so many people think, oh, it's my intuitive self that's telling me to go away. Well, it's your intuitive self protecting your ego.
But what if it's a red flag? Like, what if that person is abusive?
You'll know. If it's that goes beyond a red flag. That's a hell no.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the thing. Like, people always say, trust myself, like, or trust myself or whatever. Half the time, we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to trust ourselves, because we have all these check boxes.
For sure.
So you might want to say, oh, I trust myself. I surrender all this. Well, those are great, like, spiritual phrases. I love them too.
Yeah.
But you're not creating your world to trust yourself. You're creating your world so that your ego is protected, and you're never really trusting yourself.
For sure. It's funny. Somebody had asked me something yesterday on my mastermind call, and they were like, are you cautious with XYZ? And I was like, I can't compute that question. Like, what do you mean am I cautious? Like, like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, well, it just seems like, you know, you just do these things quickly. Like, are you cautious? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you mean like when I engage with something or someone, am I like skeptical of them the whole time? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, if like I go into it and I like figure it out. I'm not like, like, you know, I was like, I told her, I was like, I don't know how to answer that. You know, I didn't even think about that. Like, if I'm going into it, I'm going into it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to question it, because the thing is, like, you're going to know. And like, let's say that there's someone like sitting here that maybe I'm not as connected to or whatever. I don't need to be connected to them too. I'm still going to give love or whatever. It's just going to be at a certain level, right? Like, I'm fully open to you, but I might not be fully open to somebody else, but I'm going to know in that moment. Yeah. Why do I need to spend my energy thinking about it now?
I know. And worrying about it. Right. We spend so much time worrying, you know, like, and like, that's where the energy is directed. And then it's just like.
Yes.
The worry.
And we're worried about a future that we're actually creating.
I know. It's all in your mind. It's all in the mind.
It is.
This is gonna like blow people's brains. I want to, because we talked about a lot of things, but I'm curious if I asked you, like, so if somebody knew nothing about money,
yeah,
blank slate, like no programs, whatever, and you wanted to, in a few sentences, in a couple minutes, like share what you would like to share with them about money, what would you say?
Okay, I love this. So I picture like someone's like dropped onto the earth, right?
Fresh.
Like fresh, right? They just come down and
How
they're
does it
like,
work here?
they're like, they look up, like the dust is settling and all of that. Okay, so I would tell them, I would say, go out and be fully you. Only listen to within, right? Because they're not going to have the past conditioning, right? And then I would say, take a portion of the money that you get and invest it, because then you're getting it out of your frequency. You're putting it into an expansive frequency that doesn't have your personality and your conditioning. And you're basically, that's a channel of wealth that you're saying yes to. I'm ready to receive. So then you have two receivers, right? So then you have you, and then you have investing over here. And I would say, consider that a non-negotiable. No different than taxes, no different than putting gas in the car. It's a non-negotiable, because effectively it is. We're actually we're not living. People always think like investing is like a future thing, and they're like, I'll get to that. I'll be making more money then, so I don't have to think about it. But you're actually not in the present moment when you're thinking that, because your present moment reality knows that we as a human here, we came here on earth, and we know that we have our energy levels do wane and our situation changes. And if you are not in full acknowledgement of, you have a certain time in your life where you are money is energy, your energy is going to match money. It's you can make it effortless right now and call in all you want. If you're not in full acknowledgement of that, then you're not really living in the present moment, and you're not loving yourself either.
Whew. That was amazing. Thank you. Yeah. We're going to cut that. That's good. Yeah. So, I mean, I could ask you a million questions, but I'm so grateful for everything that you shared today. And I know that you have opportunities for people to learn more from you. So can you just share about like your membership options and how people can continue to work with you and learn from you?
Yeah. Well, the Spiritual Investor Podcast. So I go on, you and I talked about this as well. You know, so, I go on there and just, it's whatever needs to come through in the moment, you know, exactly. So I talk about investing, I talk about the energy of money, basically how you can kind of start to shift into a different frequency. So there's that. And then the Spiritual Investor Club, which is, it's $17 a month. It's no commitment, so you can even get in there. I have like a 5-part series, Get Started Investing. How do you set up an investing account? How do you start to choose stocks? What are the biggest beliefs that you need to sort of like look at with yourself? Like, what are the things that people are afraid of? And I do monthly live calls in there. There's a community in there and all that. So I would say start there. I mean, I run a mastermind and all of that. You can look into that, but I think just take the low-hanging fruit. Just get in the energy of it, really, because that's part of it. Because then it's kind of what we're talking about here. Like, don't overthink things too much. Take that next step, and then let that situation tell you. Yeah. Go into it and then go, hey, does something here connect with me? Right? Because I give people a stock a month too. So it's like, makes it easy for them. If I'm giving you a stock a month and I'm telling you why I chose that stock, you're going to automatically learn, and you don't have to buy that stock, but you can't. What I'm doing is I'm taking away that number one excuse from people. I don't know enough. Yeah. If I've given you that and I've told you what I did, you can never say that again. And when people say, I don't have the money to invest, well, okay, you spend the same amount on like probably a shitty dinner as you do on buying a share of Amazon. Yeah. You do have the money to invest. Yeah. Like, we've been buying a stock for $12 for like 3 years that pays a 9% return. Yeah. everyone has $12.
Yeah.
You know, like most people listening to this.
Yeah.
Right?
They will have $12.
You know, if nothing, I would say call bullshit on yourself.
Yeah.
You know? I think we all have to do that. I have to do that too to myself. So I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you made it really easy. So I'm excited. We'll put all the links in the show notes for everybody. But this has been so amazing. Thank you so much. I was so excited for this. And I just know people are going to love it. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.